All right, we're back with another chapter from George Brown, Class Clown. And when we read last week, or last time, yesterday, whenever that was, George met a new friend. Who remembers George's friend's name? Anybody? Quindell? Got Elizabeth? Chris. Like the Chris in our class, yep. So we met a new friend, and he was teaching him tricks on his skateboard, and that's where we left off. So now we're ready to get right back to business with chapter 10. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. All right. Chris lived just a block away from George, so the next morning, George and Chris walked to school together. Chris told George about a comic book he was writing. I made this superhero called Toilet Man. His secret weapon is a toilet plunger, and he carries a roll of magic toilet paper to tie up the bad guys. Sounds good, George said. It says, Toilet Man, I'll flush away bad guys. That kind of reminds me of Captain Underpants, because he's always got, like, well, not just underpants, but I mean, some of his books are called, like, talking toilets and stuff. All right. Then he smiled. Do you know what one toilet said to the other toilet? What? Chris asked. You look a little flushed. George laughed at his own joke. Chris laughed too. Hey, can I use that in my comic book? Do you guys know what it means if your face looks flushed? Might means that like you're flustered, like it could be that like you're blushing, maybe you're embarrassed by something. So you look a little flushed, but with the toilet, it's good. You could flush the toilet. Multiple meanings. Sure, George said, maybe I can help with your comic. I know lots of jokes. The boys had just reached the schoolyard when they saw Alex. George waved to him, and then he flipped his skateboard with one foot and grabbed it with his hands. Max, are you doing your cursive? Keep going. Oh, that's a pretty cool skateboard. Look at that. George was proud of his board. It was red and black with a really spooky painting of a bat skeleton in the middle. That's the coolest board I've ever seen, Alex said. Thanks, George said. You can try it if you want. I've seen him on a skateboard, Chris told Alex. He's amazing. George smiled. Just then, Louie walked over. You guys want to play killer ball before school? He asked Chris and Alex. Alex shook his head. Later, maybe, he told Louie. I want to try out George's skateboard. I bet you can't even ride that thing, Louie said to George. George just smiled. He didn't have to prove he could skateboard. He knew he could. Oh, a little bit of jealousy going on. Well, rivalry. Just then the bell rang. Ring! It was time to go inside. Saved by the bell, huh, new kid? Louie said. George pretended not to hear Louie. He picked up his skateboard and walked into the school building. I'll show you, George thought to himself, just not right this minute. All right, next chapter, chapter 11. We have gym class after this, Alex whispered. Like I whispered that. We have gym class after this, Alex whispered to George as the class worked on their math sheets that morning. I hope Mr. Trainer's back. Me too, George whispered. Otherwise, he'd have to do-si-do and promenade again. That hadn't gone so well the first time. They both stopped talking and went back to their math sheets because Mrs. Kelly was going around the room checking the kids' work. She was only one row away. Suddenly, George felt a little bubble inside, kind of like he was going to burp. Not good. It has not turned out good the last couple times. Well, yeah, burps are good to get out, but not his. His are crazy. Here comes Mrs. Smalley, he said. Oops, the word had just popped out of his mouth. He hadn't meant to say them. Although the name fit, Mrs. Kelly's perfume wasn't really smelling. Now the bubbles started to ping-pong around all on their own. George's eyes crossed and his tongue hung out. That perfume is going to make me pass out. Uh-oh, look at him. Is that very respectful? How would Mrs. Yonke feel if you guys did that to me? Big trouble. Big trouble. I'd be perfectly happy if you guys call me Stinky. False information. Don't do that. And get your masks on. I see several of you got your masks on, not at home, but here. Oh no, those words had come out all on their own too, and the bubbles were getting stronger. George held his breath, trying to force the burp down, but Alex had heard everything and was laughing. Mrs. Kelly seemed to know it was George who had made Alex laugh. Please, not now. No magic burp, George thought to himself. Alex, George, Mrs. Kelly scolded. She was not smiling her gummy smile. I had no idea double-digit multiplication was that funny. Do you want to share the joke with the rest of the class? Alex stopped laughing really fast. No, he told her, sorry. George just kept holding his breath. He shook his head but didn't open his mouth. Then a second later, he felt as if a bubble gum bubble went pop inside him. Yes, George had squelched the burp. What do you think squelched means based on what everything just happened and that he's happy about it? Elizabeth? You didn't get the burp out. Well, it might have gotten out of his stomach, but Luke, right, he stopped it from coming out of his mouth. So if I'm going to squelch something, I'm going to make it stop. In the gym, a huge black and white soccer ball came rolling toward George. It was just like a regular soccer ball, only huge, like a soccer ball for giants. It was the biggest ball George had ever seen. Have you guys ever done that one in gym? The giant, the huge ball? Oh. When I was little, we used to do that, and we'd do like a crab walk where you had to get down on all fours and like you had to crawl and then kick it across the gym, like soccer, but with a huge ball. A tall, skinny man with dark brown hair and a mustache was behind the rolling ball. He was wearing shorts and had a whistle around his neck. Who do you think he is? Yep, George figured he had to be Mr. Trainer, the gym teacher. We're playing crab soccer, Juliana explained. It's just like regular soccer, except you sit down while you're playing. Juliana sat down with her feet flat on the floor. She placed her hands on the floor with her fingers facing outward. Then she lifted her body and began to walk on her hands and feet. You guys ever do the crab walk? We did that one time when I was your gym teacher, remember? And we did that, and we crab walked kind of from one side to the other on the scooter. Kind of. No. So there, it looks like that. Look at the picture. That's how you crab walk. So your feet are on the floor and your hands are out behind you, kind of turned. George laughed. She did sort of look like a crab. Now you try it, Juliana urged George. George tried to copy what Juliana was doing, but it wasn't so easy moving his hands and feet at the same time. He wasn't going nearly as fast as Juliana was. Our team is trying to get the ball in the goal over there, Juliana said. She pointed across the gym. Mr. Trainer blew his whistle. The kids all began crawling around the floor. Alex kicked the ball really hard. It was headed right for the goal. But Louie was a quick crab. He blocked the ball and kicked it back toward the other side of the gym. Go, Louie, Max shouted. Nice save, Mike cheered. George scrambled to get in front of the ball so he could kick it away, but then it happened. Again. Something started to bubble up in George's belly. It was stronger than it had been in math class. The bubbles were already ping-ponging around in his stomach and threatening to move up into his chest. He'd done it once before. Now he had to do it again. He had to beat the burp. George quickly shut his lips tight, trying to lock the bubbles in, and then he flipped over and did a handstand against the wall. The bubbles were still trying to escape, but now George was upside down. If the bubbles moved up, they'd go into his feet. There was no way out from there. Young man, Mr. Trainer cried out, what are you doing? George didn't know what to say. He couldn't exactly tell his gym teacher that he was trying to squelch a belch. A belch is another word for a... Yep. George, watch out, Juliana shouted suddenly. Upside down, George saw the huge soccer ball careening across the gym floor. It was coming straight at George's head. Quickly, George flipped over. He landed on his rear end and then kicked the oncoming ball as hard as he could. Bam! The giant crab soccer ball went soaring across the room. Goal! Mr. Trainer shouted. Awesome kick, Juliana said. Out of the corner of his eye, George could see Louie. He looked really mad. George had a feeling he was the one who had kicked the ball right at his head, but that didn't really matter to George. Neither did how far he kicked the giant crab soccer ball or that his team was ahead. George was just happy he'd won out over the super burp, at least for now. And we'll stop right there. I think that leaves us with, I think we have 2 chapters. Chapter 12. Actually, chapter 12 may be the last one. Nope, there's chapter 12 and 13, so we will finish those next time. Peace.